Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave.
On behalf of every father and every mother.
Wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors.
And paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochny Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have a good show for you this week. We have an interesting interview coming up. We're going to have our contributor Ben interviewed an expert on Russian aviation, so that'll be coming up right after. Of course, I present, as always, the news, and that'll be followed by our report from German aid to Ukraine. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the news for this week. These are the main news items as of December 8th, 2024. Ukrainian naval drones successfully targeted and neutralized Russian surveillance systems on gas platforms in occupied Crimea, as reported by Vice Admiral Alexei Nezhpapa, commander of the naval forces, on November 7th. These strikes are part of a series of operations targeting Russian assets in Crimea. On November 27th, Russia reported that Ukrainian drones had struck Belbek military base in Sevastopol. The following day, Ukraine destroyed a Russian radar station near Kotovsky, and as I reported last week, on November 29th, Ukrainian forces eliminated 3 additional radar systems. Ukrainian developers are testing a new type of hexacopter drone equipped with fiber optic guidance to counteract electronic jamming on the battlefield, according to a report by Militarny. Designed by eBanshee, a Ukrainian company specializing in heavy UAVs, these drones aim to improve battlefield performance in environments where electronic warfare and signal interference are prevalent. The innovative fiber optic first-person view system addresses a significant challenge for drone operators: radio signal jamming. Recent tests demonstrated the drone's capabilities, successfully navigating a 10-kilometer forested area without any loss of connection or interruption. The fiber optic system provides immunity to jamming and electronic warfare, which often compromise drones relying on traditional radio communication. Although the trials have been promising, eBanshee acknowledges that further refinements are necessary. Additional tests are planned, and more fiber optic cables have been ordered for evaluation. Some of these cables will be sent directly to the Ukrainian military for real-world combat testing. Russian forces are intensifying their efforts in the Kherson region, attempting to secure positions on the islands and the Dnipro River Delta, according to a spokesperson for Ukraine's Southern Command, Vladislav Voloshin, speaking on December 4th. The attacks have focused on the Kozatsky and Krylik Islands, and it follows a warning from Kherson Oblast Governor Oleksandr Prokudin, who indicated that Russia appears to be planning a renewed offensive towards Kherson. Since Ukraine successfully liberated Kherson and adjacent settlements west of the Dnipro River in November 2022, the area has endured frequent Russian strikes from across the river. Prokudin reported that Russia has assembled a fleet of 300 boats for potential crossings, a claim corroborated by Voloshin. However, he emphasized that Moscow's attempts to establish a foothold have consistently failed, resulting in significant losses. According to Voloshin, the goal of the operations is to secure a strategic position and force Ukraine to allocate resources and personnel to counter them. Ukrainian intelligence indicates that Russian troops are training assault groups in occupied territories like Zaporizhia and Kherson, focusing on overcoming water obstacles and deploying landing parties. For the third consecutive month, Russia's use of Shahed-type kamikaze drones against Ukraine has reached unprecedented levels. Ukrainian Air Force data shows that in November alone, Russia launched 2,576 drones, a significant increase from the 2,023 deployed in October. The Russian president outlined plans to expand drone production nearly tenfold within the year, and claimed that in 2023, the Russian military received approximately 140,000 drones. Ukraine faces mounting challenges from these attacks, but has significantly improved its air defense systems, bolstered by advanced Western technology such as Patriot and NASAMS. While effective against missiles, the cost of deploying such systems against inexpensive drones is unsustainable. Therefore, mobile fire groups equipped with anti-aircraft guns, machine guns, and lower-cost rockets now play a central role in intercepting the drones. These are supported by an extensive network of sensors capable of detecting and tracking incoming threats. electronic warfare has become a key component of Ukraine's strategies. Techniques like GPS spoofing are used to misdirect drones by feeding them false location data, causing them to veer off course. According to Federico Borsari, a specialist at the Center for European Policy Analysis, Ukraine's layered defense strategy has proven highly effective, with only about 5% of Russian drones successfully breaching Ukrainian defenses. Russian President Vladimir Putin has appointed Alexander Khinshain, a State Duma deputy, as the acting governor of the Kursk region. The area has been partially controlled by Ukrainian forces since early August, necessitating what Putin referred to as a focus on crisis management. In a Kremlin-released video, Putin highlighted Khinshain's past role as an advisor to the head of Russia's National Guard between 2016 and 2018 and justified his selection for this position. Khinshain becomes the third individual to hold the governor's post in Kursk this year. The Telegram channel Farah Daily questioned Khinshain's qualifications for the role, describing him primarily as a public relations expert with limited relevant experience. Previously, he led the Information Policy Committee in the State Duma and authored Russia's controversial law banning, quote, LGBT propaganda, and contributed to the government's internet censorship efforts. Putin stated that as the region is gradually recaptured, the governor will be responsible for rebuilding affected areas and coordinating aid for residents. Khinshain replaces Alexei Smirnov, who has served as acting governor since May 2024 before officially winning the position in September. Smirnov reportedly stepped down voluntarily, citing difficulties connecting with local residents, according to the Russian transport minister Alexander Smirnov. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed Smirnov's resignation, stating that he will transition to another as-yet unspecified role. On December 2nd, the Biden administration announced a $725 million military aid package for Ukraine. This marks the 71st tranche of U.S. support to Ukraine since August 2021, according to the Department of Defense. The details of the package surfaced earlier through leaks, a frequent occurrence with such announcements. The assistance includes ammunition for NASAMS, Stinger missiles, countermeasures against drones, artillery ammunition, HIMARS ammunition, anti-armor systems, UAS, unmanned aerial systems, non-persistent landmines, tow missiles, small arms, demolition, tools, spare parts, training, and logistical support. Ukrainian Finance Minister Serhiy Marchenko has formalized an agreement with the European Union for a macro-financial assistance package worth up to 35 billion euros. The initiative falls under the framework established by the G7 countries. The agreement is unique because the repayment of the loan will come from proceeds derived from frozen Russian assets within the EU. As a result, Ukraine effectively gains access to these funds without the burden of repayment. But the total assistance amount will depend on the contributions finalized by participating countries under the initiative. If the United States also follows through with its pledged $20 billion, the EU's portion of the package is expected to total around 18 billion euros, dispersed at a rate of 1.5 billion per month until 2025. To access the funds, Ukraine must fulfill 14 reform measures across several sectors. These include stabilizing macro finances, restructuring state-owned enterprises, improving public administration, bolstering the energy sector, strengthening the rule of law, advancing anti-corruption efforts, and enhancing their defense industry. Sweden and Denmark have signed agreements with Swedish defense manufacturer BAE Systems, Hägglunds, for the procurement of 205 CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles, with 40 units specifically designated for Ukraine. The Swedish government, in its press release, highlighted that the acquisitions aim to enhance security in Europe and directly support Ukraine's defense capabilities. The total deal, which is valued at approximately $2.2 billion, includes the delivery of 115 vehicles to Denmark and 50 to Sweden, replacing units previously sent to Ukraine. The remaining 40 vehicles will be newly manufactured for Ukraine, funded by prior Danish and Swedish donations. Finland also announced a separate aid package for Ukraine worth 25 million euros, which includes essential winter equipment for Ukrainian forces. Also, Denmark has delivered a second batch of F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine as of December 7th. The first batch of Danish F-16 jets has already been deployed in Ukraine, and this latest delivery is expected to significantly improve their ability to counter air attacks. Zelensky expressed gratitude to the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, and her team, as well as the Danish people, for their continued support. SpaceX has secured a contract with the Pentagon to enhance Ukraine's access to a more secure militarized version of its Starlink satellite network known as Starshield, according to a report by Bloomberg. The agreement will upgrade the connectivity of 2,500 existing Starlink terminals in Ukraine to the Starshield system, in addition to 500 terminals already using the service. Starshield is an advanced encrypted communication platform specifically designed for greater resilience against hacking and signal jamming, making it particularly suitable for military and strategic applications. The Space Systems Command Commercial Satellite Office confirmed that the combined agreements now provide connectivity to 3,000 terminals in Ukraine. The primary goal of the contract is to ensure stable and reliable internet access to Ukraine, crucial for both military operations and civilian communications. While the Space Systems Command did not disclose the financial details of this latest agreement, Bloomberg mentioned that prior contracts with U.S. European Space Command to provide 500 Starlink terminals was valued at approximately $40 million. A Japanese robotics company, Cyberdyne Incorporated, is set to supply advanced wearable suits to aid former Ukrainian soldiers recovering from severe injuries sustained in the war with Russia. These robotic suits are part of Cyberdyne's HAL, Hybrid Assistive Limb series, designed to assist individuals in regaining muscular functions. It seems like all of their naming schemes are for evil robots, which is amazing. The initiative is funded through a Japanese government-backed project aimed at supporting Ukraine's post-war reconstruction. Cyberdyne secured a 360 million yen or $2.4 million contract to deliver 46 suits under a project managed by the Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA. These suits will be supplied to Ogawa Seiki Co., an electrical equipment manufacturer responsible for providing Ukraine with heavy machinery, rehabilitation tools, and medical devices under the same program. The HAL suits are expected to arrive at a medical facility in Kyiv by March of next year, and they will primarily support individuals with spinal cord injuries and other muscular impairments. HAL operates by detecting neural signals sent from the brain to the muscles, enabling users to perform movements such as walking or lifting objects, even with severely weakened muscles. Sensors attached to the skin surface capture these signals, allowing the suit to facilitate movement. Cyberdyne stated that its HAL technology is already in use in over 20 countries for rehabilitation purposes. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has approved over 1.3 billion euros in investments to support Ukraine's public and private sectors. The funding will be directed toward 8 projects aimed at rebuilding transport and energy infrastructure, promoting distributed energy generation, and enhancing energy efficiency. A portion of the investment will be provided as non-repayable grants. To facilitate increased support for Ukraine, the EBRD's governors approved €4 billion capital increases in 2023, bringing the bank's capital base to €34 billion. The expansion enables the EBRD to sustain significant investments in Ukraine's real economy, both during the ongoing war and in future reconstruction efforts. The United States has imposed new sanctions targeting a network accused of enabling Russian elites to evade international restrictions through digital assets. These measures focus on 5 individuals and 4 entities linked to TGR Group, an organization the U.S. government identified as a significant contributor to sanctions evasion. The list also includes a company based in Wyoming, partially controlled by an individual already under sanctions. The network allegedly exploited digital assets like dollar-backed stablecoins to bypass financial restrictions. Acting Deputy Secretary for Counterterrorism and Financial Intelligence Bradley Smith stated that this system allowed Russian elites to protect their financial interests while supporting the Kremlin. The activities attributed to TGR Group include laundering funds for sanctioned organizations, exchanging cash for cryptocurrencies without proper registration, converting cash into crypto assets for clients, issuing prepaid credit cards to bypass controls, and obscuring the origins of funds used by wealthy Russians to purchase property in the UK. The United States and the UK collaborated to dismantle the operation. Although the exact scale of money laundering remains unspecified, a 3% transaction fee suggests substantial sums. To recover £20 million confiscated by UK law enforcement, the network would have needed to launder approximately £700 million, quote, free of charge, implying total operations in the billions. Proceeds were reportedly linked to drug trafficking, cybercrime, and espionage. The UK reported arresting 84 people and seizing significant assets, including funds moved through cryptocurrency platforms and traditional banking systems. The scheme was active for several months and relied on collecting funds at 55 different sites across the UK, Scotland, and the Channel Islands. Couriers transported money from drug cartels and scammers, converting it into Tether cryptocurrency. These cleaned funds were then distributed globally. Some of the TGR-linked crypto wallets were connected to Garantex, a Russian platform sanctioned in 2022 for funding arms supplies to Russia's war in Ukraine. Aeroflot, Russia's largest airline, plans to acquire 5 Boeing 737 cargo jets from the Volga-Dnieper Group, a Russian cargo airline, to use them for spare parts. The jets, which are aged 21 to 22 years, are valued between 13.6 to 18.5 million each, according to sources cited by Kommersant and the Moscow Times. The aircraft are currently leased through Atran, a division of the Volga-Dnieper Group, with the leasing rights managed by Irish company AerCap. Aeroflot is reportedly working to secure the transfer of these leasing rights and settle insurance agreements. The airline initially planned to allocate the planes to its low-cost subsidiary, Pobieda. Industry insiders suggest that converting the cargo planes into passenger aircraft is impractical under the existing sanctions, citing high costs and technical challenges involved. Instead, Aeroflot plans to dismantle the plane for parts, including engines, landing gear, and avionics, to support its existing fleet amid restrictions on access to Western technology and equipment. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has also signed an €80 million loan agreement with Ukernafta, Ukraine's largest oil company, to address the country's energy and heating shortages. The project aims to install compact generators with capacities of up to 10 megawatts in Ukraine's western and central regions, areas currently facing severe energy shortages. As Ukraine's leading oil and gas producer and the operator of the largest network of gas stations, Ukernafta plans to use its own natural gas for power generation. The initiative is expected to alleviate the strain on the national energy grid. The loan will be supplemented by €22 million in investment grants, including $9.5 million from the Netherlands and $12.5 million from the United States. The contributions will be managed through the EBRD Special Fund. Angstrom, one of Russia's largest microchip manufacturers based in Zelenograd, has been declared bankrupt following a court ruling prompted by the financial claims from Zenit Bank. The bankruptcy decision, made on December 2, 2024, stems from a failure to pay 1 billion rubles, approximately $10 million, ordered by the court in 2019. Despite more than 6 years passing, Angstrom has not fulfilled its obligation. Initially intended as a cornerstone of Russia's microchip production industry, Angstrom was closely associated with Leonid Reiman, a former communications minister with ties to Vladimir Putin. The company had received substantial state support, including $1 billion in funding and €815 million credit lines from Russian State Development Corporation VEB in 2008. These funds were allocated to develop processors, smart cards, and electronic passports, with backing from both the Russian government and the Security Council. However, by 2014, the company had accumulated over 100 billion rubles or $1 billion in debts and ceased loan payments. Financial difficulties led to the cessation of its operations, as reported by the tax service. Currently, they are entangled in 108 enforcement proceedings amounting to around $1.5 billion and have unresolved legal disputes exceeding €500 million. And finally, this week we have headlines concerning international relations. A closed-door meeting took place in Paris involving U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and French President Emmanuel Macron. The unannounced gathering marks the second meeting between Zelensky and Trump this year, but the first since Trump's victory in the U.S. presidential election. The discussions occurred as international anticipation grows around potential peace efforts in Russia's war on Ukraine. The meeting is expected to address pathways to negotiate an end to the war and the future of U.S. military aid to Ukraine under the Trump administration. Trump arrived at the Élysée Palace as part of his first foreign visit since being elected. Before he engaged in broader talks, he held preliminary discussions with Macron, focusing on the state of global affairs and the war in Ukraine. Later in the day, Trump and Zelensky joined around 50 other world leaders at the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. The historic ceremony, scheduled for 9 p.m., celebrates the completion of a 5-year restoration effort following the 2019 fire that heavily damaged the iconic structure. Russia has initiated a test program mandating biometric data collection from foreign nationals and stateless individuals entering the country for stays exceeding 90 days. The first phase, effective from December 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025, requires these individuals to provide fingerprints and photographs at designated entry points, including Moscow's major airports. The second phase, commencing on June 30, 2025, will allow travelers from visa-free countries to pre-submit their biometric data and photographs via a dedicated mobile application, streamlining the entry process. Exemptions to this requirement include citizens of Belarus, children under 6 years old, accredited diplomats, employees of international organizations, and their immediate family members. The Maltese government has reportedly revoked the visa of Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova, reportedly before the OSCE Ministerial Council meeting is set to take place in Valletta on December 5th through 6th. The decision, described as, quote, unprecedented by the Russian Foreign Ministry, comes despite the visa having been previously approved. Malta cited circumstances beyond their control as the reason for their cancellation. In response, the Russian Foreign Ministry announced that its delegation at the meeting would focus particular attention on the decision, while accusing certain Western nations of leveraging the OSCE for their own strategic purposes. Zakharova criticized the move, attributing it to what she called the scheming of the Western Hydra. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is also expected to attend the OSCE meeting in Malta, marking his first trip to an EU member state since the outbreak of Russia's large-scale war in Ukraine. Both Lavrov and Zakharova are subject to sanctions from the EU, the US, and the UK, making the circumstances of their travel to such events a contentious issue. And last item for this week, the Yale School of Public Health's Humanitarian Research Lab released a report on December 3rd confirming that Russia has been systematically and intentionally engaging in the coerced adoption and fostering of Ukrainian children. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, at least 314 children have been identified as part of the program, involving forced relocations, placements with Russian families, and listings in Russia's child placement databases. The initiative is orchestrated by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova, Russia's Presidential Commissioner for Children's Rights, with the goal of assimilating Ukrainian children into Russian society. The report details that 148 of these children are listed in Russian child placement databases, with 42 already adopted or assigned guardianship, and another 166 directly placed with Russian citizens. The placement program intensified after Russia's illegal annexation of parts of Ukraine in September 2022, with many children held at temporary locations in Russia before being moved to institutions or placed with Russian families. The transportation of children was carried out using Russian military aircraft under Putin's direct authority. At least 67 children have already been naturalized as Russian citizens, although the report suggests that the real number is likely much higher. Recent legal challenges allow Russian guardians of Ukrainian minors to apply for Russian citizenship on the children's behalf while they renounce their Ukrainian citizenship. The report also mentions the separation of siblings, with nearly half of the children listed in the databases having known siblings, some of whom were placed separately. 80% of the children originated from Donetsk, with significant numbers from the so-called Luhansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic. These areas have been focal points for coerced child relocation efforts. Children were subjected to pro-Russia re-education in at least 8 institutions before their placement. Psychologists played a role in matching children with Russian families, giving the program a facade of legitimacy under the guise of mental health needs. Russian databases operated or coordinated by the federal government later restricted or altered information on Ukrainian children, often removing details following the International Criminal Court's issuance of arrest warrants for Putin and Lvova-Belova in March 2023. And that concludes my summary of the main headlines for this week. We will now move to the next segment.
Yeah, that would be me. Hello guys. Last week I sadly couldn't attend the stream, but now Shady's back, which means I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. I'm sorry, last week I made a joke about Arnold Schwarzenegger and saying I'll be back, and so yeah, I just had to do it. However, nearly nothing noteworthy has happened, which is why I only have a mini segment for you today. As you know, Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Ukraine on Monday and presented a package consisting of military equipment worth over 600 million euros, which is to be delivered to Ukraine in December. However, as you probably also know, nearly everything mentioned as part of this package was already pledged before, so it's not new aid. One exception to this is the announcement that Germany will deliver additional Patriot launchers. At least we didn't know about it publicly. Could be, of course, that they pledged it to Ukraine in private, but we didn't know about it publicly. I also inquired with the Dutch Ministry of Defense to check if this is somehow connected to their delivery of 3 additional Patriot launchers, which was made public just days ago. However, a spokesperson told me that the German pledge had nothing to do with their delivery, which is very great news. This means that Ukraine will receive at least 2 additional Patriot launchers. We don't know the exact amount yet. I will, of course, report on that later. In December from Germany, after having received 3 additional Patriot launchers from the Netherlands just a month prior. And yeah, that's already it for my segment. Back to you, Joseph.
Thank you, German aid to Ukraine. So, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the news. First, I would ask everyone if you could please hit that like button down there. It really does help us out. It helps spread the word about good old Tochny. Now, we do have a website, tochny.info, as you guys probably know. We have a lot of published material there. There's a lot of very detailed information now about Russian military production, Russian, manufacturing, Russian military organization. There's all kinds of databases on different types of strikes, and man, there's so much information on the website now. So head on over to tochny.info and check out all the great work of our researchers. Some of them, we can't wrangle them on the stream to talk to you guys, but they do contribute a lot. So you got to go dig it up on the website. We'll do our best though to get them on to talk about it when possible. And then also if you could check us out on Twitter and Blue Sky. Those are the 2 main platforms that we kind of promote our work on and kind of update people on. So you can kind of follow us there if possible. Also, though, we're not really super strong on any other platforms. So if you want to spread the word about us, probably people haven't heard about us there. So we appreciate you guys kind of spreading the word on social media and promoting us on YouTube. It really does help us out. We're a pretty scrappy organization. We're not well liked by the algorithm because we cover a very difficult subject. And understandably, they're very wary to monetize things like that, and so that means they want people to watch things they can monetize, right? So a lot when you guys show like really strong. One thing we've had in our favor since the beginning is you guys have been really strong supporters of what we do by liking and subscribing and all that. So the people who do follow us and support our work have been like really helpful, and we're really grateful for that. And then I think we just wanted to cover one thing because it would be a little weird if we didn't cover it at all. There, of course, have been some developments in the Syrian civil war that has been going on. I wouldn't say that Tochny is going to be any kind of go-to source for information about what's going on in Syria. It's not really our area of expertise. We have, some open source people that we do our best to sort through information from. But the truth is, we're not really going to get accurate stuff on the ground there. That being said, it does certainly affect the situation with Russia being supported by Russia, so or the Assad regime being supported by Russia. So we just wanted to kind of update on like the current situation and how it might affect things. So as of now, as far as I understand, and maybe Erlen can correct me if. The rebel forces have entered the capital of Syria. They have entered the presidential palace. It seems now, I don't think there's any direct confirmation yet, but it seems like it's pretty much confirmed that Assad has left the country. I believe Assad has mentioned that, Russian authorities have mentioned that he's in Moscow and he will step down and discuss some kind of a peaceful transition of power or something to that effect. But there hasn't been actual, there's like one image going around that's old that they're saying that's him in Moscow, but that's not true. It's an old image. So there's no actual confirmation of all this yet, but like it seems pretty much like that has happened. Like state agencies have said these things. And so, the rebel forces have taken the capital, and they've captured enormous amounts of Russian equipment. There are still Russian forces in the country, primarily, I believe, like PMCs, like Wagner and other groups like that. And they're effectively, I don't want to say trapped, but like, they're sort of surrounded by rebels, and there doesn't seem to be a clear plan to get them out of the country. Or, rebels might be a negative term, sorry to use, but they're surrounded by hostile factions from the Civil War, and they are, they're sort of, it seems like they're sort of at the mercy right now of these hostile forces. So we'll see kind of what happens with Russian forces in Syria. But I would say overall, it's just kind of a giant disaster for Russian military and security institutions. And it represents a major loss of equipment and possibly a significant loss in personnel. Erlen, is there anything you wanted to add about the situation in Syria right now and how it affects kind of Russia?
Well, so to not go too much into what is happening in Syria, because that's not really what we're covering here. I wanted to say that this will affect first and foremost their operations in Africa and their capabilities of projecting force in Africa. And that has been one of the ways they're also making a lot of money, and also a lot of money off the books that they put into various banks in some shady countries, etc. So on the long or medium to long term, it will be more difficult for them to access all of these nations where they have some sort of interest in. Specifically, they've been very involved in supplying weapons to, for instance, Sudan, Mali. Mali, there's of course a very large Wagner operation that has been going on, and also in a lot of the other countries. There's a significant connection in Libya that has been very important for Russia recently. And the reason for why this is going to be more difficult for them now is really because they don't have any place where they can transit their flights through. So yeah, it's going to be difficult or merely impossible to continue the operations in Africa like they have done until now.
Yeah, so like if I understand you correctly, right, you got a flight from Moscow full of AK-47s or whatever for Africa. You got to stop and refuel somewhere in between. And Syria was a nice place to do that because they didn't ask no questions, right? And now they don't have that. So that's the issue, right?
Yep. And of course, this being military flights, or not all of them, they also do some shady stuff with shell companies leasing Antonov aircrafts with former Russian Air Force pilots. There was one shot down not too long ago in Sudan, actually, which was smuggling weapons off the books as well. So they do both these more official operations where they're actually flying military aircraft, but to the illegal operations that are using these shell companies. And Syria was a perfect base for those flights, and that's now gone, and will definitely affect them long term, even medium term, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty significant blow to Russia in terms of it's something that they've invested a lot of blood and treasure in over the last decade or so, keeping the Assad regime propped up. And yeah, I mean, this represents a pretty significant, I would say, shocking to them failure in terms of their policies. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Erlen, any last words on that?
Well, of course, it's also a big problem for them not to have a warm seaport in the Mediterranean anymore. The Black Sea is pretty much cut off, and most of the fleet is not operational anymore, or has been chased away from Crimea or even Russian ports. I think the last port now is in Georgia, if I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong. So their warm port facilities are withering away, to say it mildly, and without even having access to the Mediterranean through the Black Sea, that was the last warm seaport the Russians had, which was in close So they won't be able to project as much force in the Med, which is important for them.
Yep. Couldn't have happened to couldn't have happened to better guys. I don't know. It's just a joke. Yeah, no, but we think it, as Erlen said, it represents a pretty significant blow to Russia's ability to project force out of their borders, and I think we certainly welcome that. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. As already mentioned, follow us on the social media, like our streams. Follow us on YouTube. We always do. We try to do interesting interviews, like Ben did with our colleague here. And please do check out our website, touching.info. Thanks to Ben. Thanks to our guest. Thanks to Erlen for always holding the fort down. Thanks to German Aid to Ukraine for always providing his report. And we'll see everyone next week. Slava Ukraini.
Heroim Slava.
On behalf of the brave.